Do you struggle with public speaking anxiety? You're not alone. We'll talk all about it. Stay tuned. That's what's up next. Hi, my name is Natasha Daniels. I'm a therapist. I make videos for people with anxiety or OCD. And today I want to talk to you about public speaking anxiety. Do you have that? Do you get like heart palpitations when your teacher or employer says, hey, you're going to have to present that? Well, I know that I really struggle with that. And I'm going to give you some of my tips to maybe not love presenting, but to at least survive presenting. But before we get started, please don't forget to hit the button and subscribe, hit the bell to get notified because I make new videos every Thursday and you don't want to miss them. Okay, let's talk about some tips on how to survive presenting. Now, even if you have to present in person or presenting virtual, which is happening more often, that can still cause a lot of anxiety. I'll tell you a story about something that happened to me. I have social anxiety, and presenting and fear of presenting and social anxiety, they kind of go hand to hand because you're so worried about rejection and people laughing and criticizing you, and there is no worse place to be than in front of a group of people, virtually or non-virtually, it doesn't matter. And one time I I volunteered or I agreed to do a training for a bunch of therapists in the school system. And I thought it was going to be like 20 people. And I was a little nervous about the 20 people. This was like 10 years ago. But I thought, I can manage it. It's not that big of a deal. And I walked into the building and I thought, this looks like a really big building. And the secretary said, it's over there in the auditorium. And I thought, what is she talking about? And I opened up the double doors and it was literally a banquet ball of hundreds and hundreds of people. And the minute I saw that, I wanted to go out the back door. I actually contemplated it. I was like, can I leave this building and just like no show? There was no way I wanted to talk in front of an audience of hundreds of people. But I had already signed in and the secretary had already seen me. So I had to do it. And when I say full-blown panic, I mean full-blown panic. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't swallow. I was breaking out into a cold sweat. Does this sound familiar? Do you struggle with this? But I survived, and it was really the beginning of me learning how to tolerate presenting. And now I'm at a place, and you don't have to get at this place, but I'm at a place where I actually don't mind presenting. I haven't presented in front of a live audience that big since then, but I think I probably could do it. I'm going to tell you a couple of my tips so that you can just survive a class or a small meeting and not have heart palpitations. So the first thing that I definitely recommend is focusing on the audience. This is what I did when I walked up in that crowd and I was like, this is make or break. I'm either going to pass out in front of all these people or I'm going to have to really survive this in a good way. And I looked at everybody and I said, nobody wants to be here. This is a meeting, right? This was like a mandatory training for therapists. And I looked around the room and I saw a bunch of bored people. I saw people on their phones. I saw people yawning. And so I reminded myself, I had a green thought. I talk about red thoughts and green thoughts in my other videos. I had a green thought that said, nobody wants to be here. Get over yourself, Natasha. Nobody cares about this. This is boring for them. So if you are presenting in school or if you're presenting in a work meeting, nobody wants to hear necessarily what you have to say. It's boring. So reminding myself of that really helped. I was like, okay, nobody wants to be here. Nobody cares. Let me get over myself. So that really helped. Sometimes people say, imagine the audience naked or in their underwear. That doesn't really work for me, but imagining them bored and knowing that they probably are bored really does help. And then the next thing I did in that moment was I looked for a smiling, happy face. So I wanted to see one person who looked engaged, who was giving me that warm smile, that nod. They were laughing at my jokes. I needed that validation. And so I found someone in the front of the audience. I didn't want to look at the huge audience. You probably won't be in front of a huge audience, probably. But even in your class or in your meeting, you just want to focus on one person that you feel is warm and fuzzy, has your back. Either it's someone you know, maybe it's the teacher, or it's your boss, or maybe it's just someone in the audience who is nodding and smiling and making you feel good. So I found one person in that audience and I focused my attention on that person, and it helped anchor me. The next thing that I did was I remembered I was very prepared. So being very prepared really helps anxious people. The more prepared you are, the better you're going to feel. Now that looks different for different people. For me, I don't like a script. I like to be impromptu. So for me, knowing what stories I'm going to tell and what points I'm going to make really helped me. But if I had like index cards and I had to read off something, that actually for me would trigger more anxiety. But a lot of the people I work with are the opposite. And they say, as long as I know what I'm going to say and I have index cards, I feel really good. So do what works for you, but prepare. The more you prepare, the less anxious you're going to feel. So for me, in that moment, I had a page with bullet points. And so it was like a guide for me. I knew, okay, I was going to tell this funny story next, and then I was going to make this point. And when I am able to be off the cuff and impromptu, I become more myself and I get more relaxed. I know most people are actually probably the opposite. So find what is good for you. And if you have to write down every single word, then do that. That will help. I would also recommend writing it in either printing it out in really big print so you don't get overwhelmed, or highlighting your main points. Whatever you can do to visually help you is really helpful. The next thing is a lot of times people like to practice. So if you can practice in front of the mirror, practice in front of your friends or your family, or get out your camera or your phone and record it, the more you can do that, the more comfortable you're going to feel. I'm not one to practice. I'm like the opposite of what I'm suggesting. I'm not one to practice. I like to be impromptu, but I find even when I'm making YouTube videos, sometimes I will talk and do the entire video and then I'll delete it and I'll make another one, and the next one will be better because it's more genuine, it's more real, I'm more relaxed. So find your method of what works for you, but practice it even if you go over it a little bit in your head. For me, I go over my big points of what I'm going to say and it makes me feel better. Another point is the power of visualization. So anxiety uses the power of visualization against you. It visualizes people laughing. It visualizes you messing up. It visualizes whatever your core fear is around presenting, your brain will imagine that. And that has power. We may not think it does, but it does, because your brain is getting traumatized. It's like pre-trauma. We're almost training the brain to have this trauma in advance. We don't want to do that. So when you are going to present the night before, close your eyes, and you can do this a couple of nights leading up to it if you want to. Close your eyes and imagine you presenting in a positive way. Now that may not come natural, it may be very forced, but go over it in your head in a positive way. See people smiling and nodding, and that helps train the brain. It's like upliftingness instead of pre-trauma. So that's very, very helpful, and I would definitely recommend doing that. So doing that visual imagery is really important, and that will really help. You don't want to set yourself up for failure where you're like, this is going to be so perfect. So you can visualize that. That's really helpful. But the other thing I want you to do is kind of accept the worst case scenario. So if people look bored, or they don't like it, or don't get a good grade, or my boss doesn't like it, whatever it is that you're presenting, accept that worst case scenario and say, I'm doing this for me. Right? When I got really into my topic in front of those hundreds of people, when I was not prepared, I didn't do any of the things that I just talked about because I wasn't prepared. I got into it for me. I started to get really into my topic, really into my story. I really focused on, my goal is to help these people, help anxious kids. And then I also saw the irony in it, because I was talking about how to help anxious kids. And so part of my grain thought as I was doing this is, it's ironic that you're anxious when you're trying to teach therapists how to help anxious kids in the school, right? And so I was able to kind of laugh at myself and mock myself in a good way, so that I was able to move forward and not take myself too seriously. So if you want to get into your topic, if you're presenting about history, get into the history, really think about it. And when you find that your brain is focusing on your physiological symptoms, like, oh my gosh, my heart is really going, or my hands are really shaking, bring it back to your topic and really try to submerge yourself into your topic so you can get into it. Okay, I want to briefly just talk to you about how to help this on the virtual world. There's a couple of extra tips for this, and then we'll wrap up. If you're doing it virtually, so you're in front of a computer and you're presenting in front of a lot of people, one, if you are able to shut down the gallery view and only see one person, that's very helpful. Or if you don't like seeing yourself present, take off that self view if you can. That can be very helpful. The other thing that I recommend doing, and I do this a lot when I am doing a virtual presentation or something, I don't know, I'll get a whiteboard, a dry erase board, and I'll write down some of my big points. And I'll put it on the couch in front of me so I can see it kind of over the camera so it doesn't look like I am looking away. It looks like I'm still looking in the camera, but I'm seeing my notes. So that's a little tip for you if you have to present, so that you don't feel like you're gonna like forget something, or like I always worry I'm gonna forget someone's name, so I always write their name on there so that I feel more relaxed. I know presenting is not fun, and trust me, actually the more you do it, the easier it gets. I've done it so much now that presenting is not a big deal for me, where it used to be so anxiety producing that I would have a full-blown panic attack. And that can be you too. So practice, try some of the tips, and leave a comment below on what's the worst thing about presenting to you. And if you have a tip of something that you do, leave it, because we can all help each other. So I hope that you find the sparkle in everything you do. I hope that you enjoy my videos. Subscribe, and you will see them again next Thursday. Take care.